Good evening, guys.
Good evening, sir.
Well, I think today I'm going to be living up to my name down there at the bottom.
Good to hear.
Nickname, you mean? It's your nickname.
Oh, the troublemaker returns. Guys, we got one for you. That's going to spin some heads. Particularly of elders and pastors and the woman.
Well, always the
We're
woman.
talking about Quarrelsome.
Is it any wonder? Is it any wonder that our audience is almost 100% men?
No, and the one woman is, of course, my wife because she loves watching our stuff. And I do have to put a little caveat out here. We are having a rocking rainstorm where I live, and internet has been spotty all day. So if I drop, I'm sorry, everybody. I'll try to get back as soon as I can.
So we're doing quarrelsome church wives. I think there's a lot of those, don't you?
All
I
of
was
them.
just thinking. Quarrelsome church wives. Do you have two qualifiers? You don't really need. You could just say church wives because by default they're all quarrelsome. I mean, it's maybe not 100%, but as a generalization and a stereotype, yeah, it's up well over 90%, probably over 95%.
Steve, did you get to see the thumbnail for tonight?
I did. That's what brought me to that comment.
I kept looking at the word quarrelsome and I just kept thinking, this is redundant. And it's a really long word. Hard to fit. Yeah, but it's redundant. People will know what we mean.
Well, the Bible talks about the quarrelsome woman. It's like it's better to be in the corner of a rooftop, right? A housetop than in sharing with a quarrelsome wife, or better to be out in like the wilderness or desert, right? In Proverbs. Oh, yeah, I was talking on Twitter, I think today or yesterday. It's either this morning or yesterday. And I was like, I don't think I've ever heard a sermon on the quarrelsome woman. We all hear things about manning up, be a better man, wife up these women, have a bunch of kids, having kids, not necessarily wrong with it, marrying nothing necessarily wrong with it. But it's all these things that men have to do, and you generally don't hear things that women are required to do. And you certainly will not hear a sermon about the quarrelsome woman.
Well, of course not, because you know who really runs the church? The church ladies. There's a little committee or the whatever, and if pastor's going to get an earful, if he offends them, he's implementing changes they don't like. He's going to hear from one or many, and then they're going to beep, 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 beep behind the scenes. And, he's got to keep them happy. He's just like a husband trying to deal with a quarrelsome wife, dealing with a quarrelsome female parishioner, member of your church, whatever you want to call. Same thing, same dynamic.
Well, hopefully, is our audio better, guys?
I just loaded the stream up on my end, and I can't hear an echo. So, Colonel,
Okay.
it might be with your setup, maybe. I don't know.
I also had a shared screen on with the mute. I just muted it.
Just
in case that was.
Oh, yeah, that can do it. Yes.
Okay. So it's muted now. All right. Quarrelsome women. Many times, a man is a day late and $1 short. Well, it's actually usually much worse than that. Money's been channeled and transferred, withdrawn over months. He doesn't get it. Sex dried up. Verbal conflict has been a bit higher than usual, with more disrespect. But surely the man thinks it's just a little bump in the road. He wants the marriage to work. It happens to everyone, he thinks. See, that's the problem. It happens a lot, but it shouldn't happen to everyone. Marriage should not be very difficult work. The guy is actually months behind and maybe a lot of money short, not just a day late and a dollar short. Why is marriage so difficult today? Well, today's woman is raised as a feminist, a victim playing rebellious Madonna whore, many times with all the sanctimonious church tripes and lingo, which twist the scriptures to the destruction of families, the church, and society. How many women initiate divorces, guys? What percentage?
It's over 70. That's the number we keep hearing.
I hear 75 a lot.
Okay.
I've heard some people say 80, and then the church men
Oh,
come
yes.
in. Oh, it's not 80. It's not 80. Okay, so just be conservative, say over 70.
Right, because those last 5% make all the difference.
Wow. Women also are awarded 80% of primary custody. They get a meal ticket,
Wait, that's
sometimes alimony.
deceptive.
Okay.
According to Terrence Popp, redonkulous.
All right.
Like 7% of the time, women don't show up for court. So the men win. Of the
Whoa.
remaining 93% of cases, men win maybe 8%. So it's more like the man can have his kids or gets custody 15, 16, 17% of the time. And half of that is due to the woman not showing up.
Okay. So they get a lot of the custody, the women.
Unless she's on crack and is visibly impaired or certifiably is insane. I mean, not just your normal crazy woman. No, certifiable.
Doctor's notes, white, big burly men dressed in white clothes hauling you off to the asylum,
Oh,
kind of
wow.
insane.
Right. And then she has to demonstrate that behavior toward the judge.
Yeah.
So unless it's that, and then you can document drugs or something like that. No, she's gonna get them.
All right.
That's called the Duluth model, right? The assumption that the woman is the best place for the kids to end up.
No,
It's
called the tender years doctrine. The Duluth model
years.
is to arrest
Oh,
the
that's
man
okay,
whenever
yes.
there's a DV call by the police.
Wow.
Yeah, shoo. These are only extenuating factors that the judge can choose to ignore. That's right. You heard that right. The judge can choose to ignore drug convictions and trips to the asylum, trips to the loony bin. If the judge decides that if the judge says it's better for the wife to get him, in those cases, I almost have to wonder if there's some pressure from the state for those sweet federal dollars, federal child support matching dollars.
That's
That's
a strong motivator to give it to custody to the woman and make the man pay through the nose on child support.
Follow the money.
Didn't Terrence? Terrence Pop actually did a short on this recently, and I watched it, and the numbers were just breathtaking.
So
Yeah, I mean,
they get
well, let's do a shout
they
out
get
to Terrence Pop, and he's on YouTube. Redonkulous. I think that's the name of his stream. Redonkulous.
Redonkulous Regiment.
Yeah. He's been demonetized. I really enjoy his work, and he documented to have saved a lot of men's lives going through divorce from suicide. And he even talks about he was actually thinking about it. We've said in the past, the three of us none of us seriously considered it. We understood very well why it's appealing. So,
Well, you don't have to be seriously considering it to look at when you're in that situation, look at it and go, you know what? I get it. I don't want to do that to myself. And usually in cases where the guys are like that, it's because they have good friends and family around them. I'll get more into my story later about what I did and what my friends and family did.
all right, guys. So they get the custody, they get a meal ticket, and sometimes alimony, which they might not even spend that on the kids, but they can probably, if they lower an income in some places, they can even also qualify for government handouts, government programs. So a lot of times the women short term are incentivized to kick men to the curb. This reality is still a reality, even for these ladies that go to church. Rollo actually describes this problem well, and I'll put my screen up there. It says, no, I'll do. Zoom in. There you guys, you can read it now. He says there are other factors contributing to the abysmal state of Western marriage, but the main reason is an 800-pound gorilla in the room that no mainstream religious leader has had the will to address for over 40 years now. The New Order's hustle economy pastors have found it far more profitable and church sustainable to rely on impassioned appeals for a return to old order masculine responsibility as a course correction for marriage. The story is always the same. The only way to save Western society from degeneracy and socioeconomic collapse is for men to man up and assume more masculine responsibility. Appeals for acknowledging the older order masculine authority that used to be a balance to all that responsibility hasn't entered their thinking for decades now. Furthermore, any consideration of women's influence in the state of modern marriage is also redirected to being the moral responsibilities of men. And that's from The Rational Male, his book on religion by Rollo Tomasi. And the page numbers there.
Well, of course, that makes sense, because how many pastors get up there and say, no wonder marriage is going in the toilet and you have all these divorces because men, you are using porn. You need to stop using porn. No wonder your wife doesn't want to sleep with you. You're using porn. Or maybe you're staying out, you're working too much, or maybe you're drinking too much. It's your fault that she doesn't want you. But you got to stop that porn use, because that is the root of all evil.
Steve, show me the man and I will find you the crime. That's the church's MO.
Yes.
So, all this responsibility, man up, take more responsibility, but there is no authority. responsibility without authority, I think Rollo says, is, guys,
We can't use that word on YouTube.
you can't.
No.
Mm.
Having a master, being under the thumb
Yeah.
of a master, is it something
Yeah.
like that?
Mm.
Yeah, and being unable to change that outcome. How about this? A piece of owned property, a piece of owned labor.
Oh yes, yeah. Forced
Yes.
forced labor. Hmm.
Yeah. Yes. Forced labor.
Oh man.
Not only is the church complicit in this forced labor of men, it encourages it.
It doubles down like a woman.
Oh,
Man,
it
man,
needs
where's
it,
the
it.
man, more responsibility. But then, oh, yep, man's fault, man's fault, man's fault.
How else do you keep your? Ooh, I should say that. How else do you keep your pay pigs showing up in the pews every week? And yes, I just called the women pay pigs. We all have somebody that we're tithing to, guys. Yeah, okay, we've got the pay piggies for the OF girls, but you know what? Women are pay pigs too. They're just dumber about it.
So, guys, we're just now starting to kind of hit on the problem of the quarrelsome woman. We're laying the backdrop. Oh, a lot of times you have a quarrelsome woman. How dare you tell me what to do? Hey, maybe the bed's dried up. Maybe some stuff doesn't seem just quite right, and you're just starting to realize that. Oh, and then you or she gets the elders involved or the pastor involved, and then you maybe not that. Maybe you go to like this Christian marital counseling or couples counseling, or maybe the church sends you to do that. Ah, boy, guys, we have some stories to tell you. You want to tell your story first, Steve?
Yeah, what part of the story do you want me to say? I mean the church part?
Yeah, the church, how the church, your
Okay.
marital problems, the church, and counseling.
Okay. Well, it was first marriage, lost cause. Lasted 17 years, but it was a lost cause from the beginning. Uh she called, she had a master's degree. I met her when she was a teacher at a high school. Um so she had fun in her 20s. It's late 20s. Okay, I'm a young professional engineer making good money. Oh, this looks like good marriage material. Okay, so we go out for a number of years. Sex was pretty good. But, it's all deception. That's all to hook you in. So anyway, get married. She's infertile. Imagine that. Well, maybe we were not meant to be together. There was no biological attraction there. Maybe it was her past behavior, promiscuity, birth control, maybe an abortion. But, she was a good church woman, good Catholic. I was not Catholic at the time. So, then you go through the turmoil of marriage. You realize there's problems. She wants to keep the appearance of doing right. So we actually went to the Catholic marriage uh, retreat, Retrovi, which is a
Okay.
program for troubled marriages. It's a weekend retreat, and it's good intentions. I think it does a lot of good because it's primarily run by couples who've been through that process and saved their marriage. But when we went through it, it was early 2000s. So, the problems were somewhat similar back then, but different. But anyway, it's about improving communication. But I would still say it's on the egalitarian model because it's understanding each other, and there's no emphasis on the husband really has the authority. But all that is dependent on the woman cooperating in the process. And actually, you're supposed to go and talk about this stuff. Well, you go in your private time, she won't talk about it. It's not going to help. But she went through the process, she went through the motions. But no, he's just such a bad man. And then, she'll come up with other excuses. And then she'll go to the pastor and say, well, you know, I'm concerned about his something sexual with me, or abusive with me, or abusive with the children, or something sexual with the children. Oh, yeah, you're concerned. So, yeah, you're good to separate. And once she gets kind of that blessing to proceed, it's not going to change.
Steve,
I remember we went before you do that. We went to one pastor or one priest, and he was kind of a straight talking guy. And so we're in there, he's a masculine man. And she starts crying, and I'm sitting there just impervious to it. And he gets on my case because, oh, your wife is all emotional. You just sit there like a stick and do nothing about it. Holy shit, I've seen it all, buddy. And you're falling for her crap. Well, that wasn't any help. So they're all fucking manipulated, and they'll take the woman's side. Now I'm done with my rant.
Well, I just wanted to tack something on there. You listed out a lot of reasons that the woman can use to get the blessing of the church, but I want to say that probably the most common one is going to be, oh no, I caught him doing some sort of corn. I caught him watching some sort of corn. The next one's going to be, he asked me to do something that I don't feel comfortable doing in bed.
Yeah, those kind of things are going to happen. And yes, let me address that. Yep, she is uncomfortable doing that with him.
Aha.
And with me at the end of every
right
refusal.
Because she was doing that in her 20s, that and more. Okay, now, is there any guarantee of that? No, but 95% of the time, she was given away for free some really out there stuff that she will not even consider with you, because
she's a good girl
here's
now.
the problem.
She's a good girl now.
She was never that into you. I mean, she never had the tingles for you. It's all been an act. It's really been, he wanted the ring, she wanted the income, she wanted the stable man, the father for her kids, and so she was willing to act like a whore to get that from you. So how does she act? Well, she uses her two parts her legs. And then you think, oh great, I can wife this woman up. I can have a lifelong supply of sex. Yes, count me in.
A lot of guys think that.
I was one of them.
And Nick is laughing because that's what he was thinking too.
Yes. I was one of those guys. I married a girl who had triple digits hanging off of her, and she told me that. Like, I knew that. And of course, as a guy, what are you thinking? Oh, hey, look, this girl, she knows how to have sex. She knows how to have good sex. She's going to know all the different stuff, the crazy stuff that every guy wants to do, whether or not they're willing to admit it to themselves. Okay. It's like, oh,
and she's
yeah.
so experienced that she doesn't have sex hangups. Great.
Yes. She's not going to have a problem with this. She'll know, hey, look, particularly if you're a guy who isn't that experienced, you can look at that and you can go, hey, look, I can learn stuff from this girl. And we can have fun exploring that. That is actually something I told myself. It's a lie. And I want to say this, even the church girls who are play acting at being freshly made prudes will tell you this so that, because they know that what you're going to think. They will confess their past sins. And they'll say, oh, well, I'm not that girl now. But yes, I did all those things. I had to repent. And you are going to get the sob story about their conversion and how painful it was and how much wailing and gnashing of teeth they had to do before, kneeling, prostrating themselves before God, right? But they're going to tell you, but they're not going to tell you, oh yeah, I did this with that guy. And no, it's going to be, well, I did all those evil sexual things with those other guys, but I'm different now. And
they're not okay. I don't think they're going to go into a lot of those details.
They're
just
not
going to say I was promiscuous.
Uh-huh.
They are developing a narrative, a story that is going to kind of cover over that. They're not going to tell you about that night with the two guys. No.
But they know that they don't need to, because they know that you will fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Because you want that. And here's why it works so well. We have blasted out into the world that all men watch so much porn, they start early, et cetera. So they know that they're playing the odds here. They know that the odds are very high that you have seen women do some pretty crazy things, and that you're thinking, hey, that would be really fun to actually try with a real woman, as opposed to just watching on a screen. Okay. And we've talked, before on this channel about how in person is better than a screen. Okay, it is. And they know that. They know that you're looking for something better than what you've got. They know that you can fill in the blanks. And so they can sit here and architect this narrative, this woe is me narrative, and that you're going to fill in the blanks about how, what they were doing before. And you're going to go, oh yeah. I'm going to get me some of that right there.
You're giving them too much credit. They don't think that far. They just know through their life, they got into trouble. They did something wrong. Dad caught me. Yeah, Dad, I was there. I didn't know it was going to be like that. I kind of did some of that, but everybody else was doing it, and I was kind of dragged there, so it really wasn't my fault. It's gonna leave out a lot of the details, but they are skilled at figuring out what narrative to develop, and then if he's not buying it, well, then you add a few more details in to flesh it out a little bit more, but you never get at the truth.
Oh no, I'm not saying you get at the truth, but at the same time, based on my experience, I do think that when these girls get into their early mid-30s, they do start putting more thought into how they do this. I don't know if they're going quite as far as I'm implying, but
they are getting coached from other women.
Oh yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when you're a 22-year-old woman and all you have to do is imply that you'll spread your legs and you get men lining up for it. Yeah, you're right. You don't have to think that far ahead. But when you're a 32-year-old woman and the men aren't lining up anymore, you are, and you can see it all over TikTok. The mid-30s girls, they do start trying to work the problem. Now, they start trying to work the problem like a teenager because that's where they stop maturing. But yes, I did just say that. And if anyone thinks that's radical, that's been around since I was a teenager. So I'm not saying anything y'all haven't heard before.
Right.
Well, Plutarch, tell us your story about church marriage problems and counseling. You alluded to some of it, but
Yes, I did allude to some of it. So I did marry a recently reformed whore, and she was quite open about that. And that's why I'm saying this experience, it's like this was my experience was, and I knew her. We met through a Bible study. So yeah, that's like how we met, was a Bible study. She was doing all the right things, saying all the right words. Um, we meet when we originally met. Of course, we were at a Bible study. She had a boyfriend. Uh, she eventually ditches him to switch with to switch, basically. Um, oh yeah, to me. She ditches him to switch to me. Um,
monkey branching.
oh, women monkey branch, yes. And
Okay.
I didn't, again, because and I've said this before, I had the church and people in the church chirping in my ear about how women behave. So I knew some of the red pill principles, but I hadn't experienced them. So I was like, yeah, but my church people, they're Christians and they're trustworthy and they're telling me how this actually works, and I should listen to them, not these crazy, atheist red pillars over here. And so,
Mhm.
like, I was aware of what the red pill taught at the time, but I didn't believe it, and I did not place it above the church teachings. And so she said all the right words about how she really wanted to get her life together, settle down. She didn't want to have to, she even told me she didn't like having all these different boyfriends. Of course, she didn't like that about her past. We had to say all the right Christian terms of repentance about that. Okay, so we actually go to she starts going to my church at some point during this as well, and so we go to premarital counseling with my pastor. And I actually want to say that my pastor did a fine job at the time. I mean, in terms of not totally simping for the girl. Remember, she's kind of a new person at the church, so he wasn't really sure what to think of her. And he absolutely did buy her stories, but it's like, how much do I put on him for that? You know, uh, because one thing that was a little disconcerting was just how much she lied throughout the whole premarital counseling. And it was smooth. Guys, these were the smoothest lies you ever heard. It was just as if she was having a regular conversation over over a wine and a good steak, talking about the weather. And the lies weren't really about the her sexual history, because she had admitted it to me, which means it was going to come up because of how the counseling worked. It was, there was some one-on-one, and then there was, of course, together. So she knew exactly what she told me. So she knew exactly what she had to admit to the pastor. Okay. And he took
Okay.
that for what it's worth, but he didn't really like push back on it or say anything about it, because he kind of had to say, yeah, well, okay, you're a repented, Christian. Like, what can I say? That was your past, right? And I'm sure Nick will have lots of thoughts on that particular dynamic here as we go. Um, and I did not find out about all the lies she told this uh, during this premarital counseling until the last 6 months of our relationship. That, and though the last 6 months are when she's basically deciding to leave. Um, and that, of course, is when she found the other guy. And is it, and this is something that I do struggle with a little bit. Is it a lie if you is it a lie if you believe it at the time? Like, You know?
Yeah, I've
Reality
thought
has a
through
way
that
of
one.
asserting itself.
Um, it's not true, but at the time, she was lying to herself. She
Yes.
wanted it to be true and thought it was true
Yes.
and thought she had repented because she wanted different things now. She wanted a husband. She wanted to move into a different phase of her life. Therefore, that's what she wanted. So, yes, I repent of my past. So she believed the things coming out of her mouth. So no one could detect that she was lying
Hmm.
because consciously she wasn't lying. She was just full of shit.
Ah, full of shit. That's a good way to describe my ex. That's a great way to describe her. Um, then uh, as far as dealing with her during the marriage, particularly towards the end, she refused. And this should have been a massive red flag to me earlier than it was. But guys, when you're in the middle of this stuff, you're not thinking straight. Um, uh, this is a great quote from a philosopher that was recently quoted to me about something else. Chief of sinners, to be inconsistent is to engage in the nature of lying. It's a philosopher named Greg Bonson, and he was actually recommended to me as a read on a different topic. So maybe that'll come up later. But thank you for that. Yes. Um, so, but when we were going through the final months of the marriage, she wanted to go to counseling, but she insisted it be a non-religious counselor.
She went to a non-religious counselor,
Yes.
and what happened?
Well, I mean, I've told that story before. I'll recap here. The first 3 sessions were her bitch fest, where she unloaded on all the things I wasn't doing, not making enough money, not helping out around the house, all this and that, and blah blah blah, the usual standard pablum. The 4th session, the counselor actually asks her if she's gotten everything off her chest. She says yes. Is that all? Okay. Counselor looks over at me and says, "Okay, so what are your problems in the relationship?" This is counseling 101 stuff, right? And I start going through my list. I'm a guy, I'm more succinct. I get through most of the list in the first session. At the end of the session, she looks over to my ex and says, "So, are any of these things that uh, you think we could work on?" She goes, "I'll think about it." That was the last time we ever went to counseling. And a few weeks later, I would be filing for divorce when I discovered the text messages between her and the other dude on her phone.
Oof. So, you have a quarrelsome woman, marriage problems. Guess the church really didn't. Oh, what was the reaction of the church?
Oh, in my case, the
Yeah.
church did not know until I told them about the divorce because I was very ashamed of it until I actually told them I filed. I didn't tell them what was going on. I didn't tell them. We fought, and I mean full volume screaming matches. So, you want to talk about a quarrelsome wife? Yes, I had one of those. It was, oh, I think I was telling Steve on Monday, or Steve and Nick on Monday, that my solution to the screaming was to go get in my car and drive. I would end up in some parking lot somewhere, scream at the windshield for an hour, and then wear myself out, calm myself down, and go back home. The church, when they found out about all of this, my pastor was actually pretty chill about it. I don't want to get on his case too bad because he didn't get involved much, but many of the men in the church kept asking me what I did wrong. What could I have done differently? And they kind of framed it as, well, yeah, we know she cheated and we know that's a bad thing, but what could you have done to maybe prevent her from prevent or dissuade her from doing that. And I'm sitting here and I'm
Gotta be
listening to this. Yeah, the fuck you guys on about? She wanted to cheat. I didn't, and that was, by the way, the answer of I didn't do anything wrong was not acceptable. No, it
good
was
night.
they would ask the question in a different way, trying to see if there was some other angle that they could tease something out of me that I did wrong.
Because the man is responsible, right? He's
Yes,
responsible for everything. Therefore, you must have did something wrong. They don't have that much agency, apparently, but but they can throw all the fault on man.
as far as the church is concerned in general, I think they kind of treat women as if they have no agency, that it is entirely on the man. Because it was kind of like, yeah, we know that she cheated and we know that's a bad thing and we don't condone that. But back to you. I mean, at least they acknowledged it, that cheating is a bad thing and that I wasn't cheating. But what did I do? Well, I didn't actually do anything. I just wasn't what she wanted anymore, as Steve said about his. Just wasn't what she wanted anymore.
Mine was a little bit, well, I had no hope in the church. Or no, I mean, here's what happened. She was trying to get me out of the house. We were having problems. You need to move back. I was unemployed at the time. Okay, gee. Who'd have thought that she gets rid of me then? So I was supposed to move out and go back, live with my parents for a while and collect my thoughts. Yeah, okay. So she had things in the works. I wasn't leaving. So she went ballistic and got physical. And I called 911 and they arrested her for assaulting me. But I think she was already talking to the attorney. The attorney was also a private investigator. They went through my stuff and because over time they knew things that they shouldn't have known, even about my discussions with my attorney, which was on my email. They went through internet all in depth. Of course, they found some porn stuff and then made this somewhat convoluted, a few facts that we can weave into the narrative of uh, pedo stuff. But they went through my background so thoroughly that if there'd been any actual stuff or any infidelity or anything like that, that certainly would have come out. It didn't. But they could make it
Still
made
make
a
the
good
accusation.
story. So how it came out was inclinations towards that. And then referred to a psychologist. And then the psychologist, well, you're here for a reason. There must be something. So then he finds, sexual disorder not otherwise specified, but I'm no danger to my children. Okay, well, that's all contrivance. It's all baloney anyway. But when you throw enough shit at the wall starts to look brown. So by no means was I a perfect man. And like most men, you look through enough stuff, you're going to find some things that don't look so good. But once you get down that trail, and you remember, a private investigator who is also an attorney can spin things, and then a female judge, you don't have a chance. And then they start spinning that with the church, and okay, you're just done. No pastor is going to come to you. I even went to talk to a pastor to get a reference. He wouldn't touch it. He was a decent man, but no, Steve, I can't do that for you. Oh, gee, thanks. So even he didn't believe me. I mean, you think My situation is uncommon.
No, it's
Not
not.
really.
They're
Not
told to do
really.
this
It happens
because
all the time.
the accusations from a woman, they can have no proof, but they still taint the image of a man, and a lot of times they weigh that in consideration on custody as well. So they can get maximum custody, and maximum child support.
So here's an innocent story. Uh, my wife and I are sleeping. We have a 2-year-old daughter. We're sleeping in bed, and because he takes care of the kids all day, I have to get up if there's crying in the night. So sleeping in bed, I'm sleeping naked under the covers. Kid starts crying, having a tantrum. I get out and rush in there to see what's going on and comfort the child. Guess what? I ran into the room naked. Oh my God, he's one of those. Ah, really? I mean, these are just common things. But no, now this is evidence of something bad.
It's evidence of a dad not in a sleep deprived state, not thinking things, not thinking about the potential consequences of that. And what
Well,
guy would?
you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 2 years old. That's the age of sexual innocence. You're not even thinking about that. This is totally normal and natural in a lot of families, maybe not all. You're not going to be thinking puritanically all the time. You're certainly not going to think about, oh, what could I be accused of? You're dealing with the situation at the time. So is there a requirement for good Christian people to always wear boxers and a t-shirt when they go to bed? Is that what Christians do? This is
Well,
how absurd it is.
okay, I'll say this, and I know you guys, but maybe the Mormons are onto something with their dress codes. Nick knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, the Masonic, I mean, magical underwear.
Right, but it would prevent this particular avenue of attack. This very specifically. I am putting my tongue firmly in my cheek here.
But let me point out that some of these beliefs are strictly American, from our Puritan heritage, which has pervaded everything. And in Europe, this thought would not even cross people's minds. We have a distinctive culture here of Puritanism, which is repression of sexuality in certain areas, but just rampant obsession in other areas. It's like schizophrenic.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you wanted to add to your story, Steve? Your experiences?
Uh, if a woman is just dead set on divorce, gone down that path, there is very little a man can do because, as Nick said, he's behind. He's not realizing that the situation is unfixable. Only years later that he'll realize he was never sexually attracted to him. He never loved him. It was all contrivance. It was all a fantasy of moving into her family existence. But he was never into you, bro.
You were the best financial option she could get a hold of at the time that this motivation hit, and because that's exactly my story. Old enough to be transitioning out of the hoe phase into the security phase, That's right where my ex was. You know, I heard all the sob stories about wanting to settle down, start a family, do this, do that. Thank God we didn't actually ever do that because that would have made the divorce about 1 billion times worse. Yeah, Nick, I see you over there. Uh, um, so guys, anymore, and I hate to have to say this, but if you're in a relationship with a woman and things are cooling down, pull the ripcord sooner than later, because guess what? She is 6 months ahead of you. And look, I know we want to believe that marriage counseling can fix this, and people come and say, marriage counseling saved my marriage. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. It saved her financial situation, but she's still pining for that other guy behind your back, even if she
Yep.
doesn't.
And that's why she's so quarrelsome. That's why she's so quarrelsome. She doesn't like you.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Well, quarrelsome and denying sex, they kind of go together.
Yep.
So when you see those two things, Plutarch's right. Pull the trigger sooner,
Mhm.
pull the ripcord sooner. But I'm going to say, well, you might have to do that, but at least pack your parachute. What does that mean?
Be
That
prepared.
means make sure you have some credit cards that are only in your name, not joint. Get your own bank account only in your name. Now, because Christians are going to say, oh, everything needs to be joint. No, you need to start pulling back the finances and taking control of your earning and get some money set aside, because she's setting aside money. He's been
Oh yeah.
fleecing money out of the account. Get your money out of the account, because the minute the divorce is filed, he's going to clean out the bank accounts and leave you without any
Mhm.
money while she pays her lawyer. So get the money out first. Whoever gets the money out first kind of wins. And oh, this is unethical. Baloney. It's it's in your vows that she is not to deny you sex. It is not in the vows that you need a joint bank account. You are to provide for her. You can provide for her by keeping the money in your name and keeping it separate. And do not trust a woman who is quarreling with you and denying you sex. Do not trust her. Separate your money first and foremost, and get any valuables out of the house, things that are yours. Start planning ahead in case you got to pull that ripcord. Pack your parachute, guys.
And this is actually something, this was I heard in my church, but it was not in relation to me. I actually heard it before I got married my first time, that if you don't have a joint bank account, you don't love her. If oh no, I actually heard this too in my church. This is and Nick knows which church I was a part of. This was the conservative side of the Presbyterian church. And also, if you hide money from her, as Steve is suggesting, that's abuse. You are actually
Everything is these days.
well, but this was a church, and I heard this stuff in the 2000s. So we're talking, 15, 20 years ago. I was hearing this stuff in the church about how, hiding money from your wife is abuse. Now, you could make the argument that they're saying, "Oh, well, but not if she's, planning on leaving." No, they actually meant that too. Like if you suspected something, no. Hiding money is financial. These concepts have been around for a lot longer than us guys have been talking about them publicly on the internet. A lot longer. And the church pushed these ideas. I heard these 20 years ago as a young man growing up and trying to figure out, well, okay, do I get married? Who do I get? I'm listening to these old biddies in church telling these men that this is not okay. to have separate accounts and
Of course not. She needs complete, total 24/7 access to your money. But you don't have complete 24/7 access to her pussy. You have to do that by appointment only. And sorry,
Steve,
I was sick during that appointment. We'll have to set up another appointment, maybe next month.
Steve, that asking for that 24-hour access, that's abuse too.
Oh,
of course it is.
Anything that's pro man, anything that's for the man is much.
By the way, guys, I want to say this so that people understand why we're talking about this. These stories are designed as and intended as examples of a quarrelsome woman. We're not out here saying these things because we just need to unload on women and get our feelings in order. I've been with a hottie for 10 years. I so completely won my divorce financially, relationally. I don't have any, like for me, my ex is just like, yeah, that was another person. Okay, whatever. She's just another person that I used to know. Just somebody that I used to know. But the reason that we're talking about these stories is so that you guys can hear from people who've gone through it about what a quarrelsome wife actually is. And it doesn't have to be that she's just yelling and screaming and hitting. The old biddies at church telling you that it's abuse to demand access, that's a quarrelsome wife. Am I wrong, Nick?
No, you're right. I'll share my story here in a minute. But yeah, you're completely correct. Yeah.
We'll let
Did
you
you
go.
hear me?
Yes, we'll let you go.
Okay, man. All right. So Steve and I were on Pearly Things, so there's a video of us telling our story. So if you want the in-depth story, you can go over there. I'll try to sum it up as best I can. I was a technical virgin, you could say. Never had, intercourse. I did other things, in college and stuff, but never did that. And I was convicted that I wanted to marry that way and found a lady. Met her parents. She was a church-going Presbyterian woman. She was really into me. She was doing the love bombing. It's like, man, this is so great. She's just absolutely effing perfect. Like, she touched my pee-pee, made me happy. We didn't do anything then, but we didn't go all the way. But yeah. All that stuff. Uh, really into me, just texted me all the time, love bombing me. She even tricked me into proposing to her. So we got married within like 9-10 months after we met. We did the premarital church counseling, which was fine, though she lied out her ass. Pastor did a good job. But it was also long distance, so I was working a few hours away in the oil and gas business, and I guess she could kind of conceal who her real identity was because I wasn't around her and her environment all the time. So we got married. Real interesting. She was supposedly a virgin. Well, there was no evidence of that. Uh, uh, there's some pretty good, our sexual life was pretty good for the first few months. But then I found the porn. Then I found the sexting while we were engaged, which indicated that she had been sleeping around a lot and all the crazy crap that she did all this crazy crap through text sexting. She swore this was all fake. She never was doing any of that stuff. And no, she did stuff before marriage, but she never slept with another man. I'm like, and guess who believed that dumb excuse?
Yeah.
This guy. Oh,
Well, she's a convincing liar.
oh, that's the
And you
case. So,
and you want to believe her too.
oh yeah, I wanted to forgive, move on, but guess what happened after that? Guess what dried up?
Her pussy dried up and it was kind of off limits from then on.
Pretty much
Shocking.
for about 11 years, so almost off limit. Though I have a bunch of kids, and maybe once, sometimes it was once a month, sometimes once every couple months. I think one time it was almost a whole year, right? But like the one time we do something, she would end up pregnant. It's almost as if she was just using me for my seed, which is kind of weird. But oh yeah, all the hitting towards me, hitting, punching, biting, slamming her stuff into walls and slamming her head into walls, you know, slamming her arms, and she'd get bruises on her hands and her wrists. And I'd have to take a knife. I'd have to take a knife. I'd have to restrain her. And sometimes I had to grab the wrists. That means to be able to stop her and take the knife out of her hands after she would, hold it to her wrists. And an unaliving weapon was also taken away from a head. Um, yeah. Um, but yeah, the hitting,
Um,
all that stuff, they're yelling and screaming all the time. And the church would get involved. She'd call the church and they're like, "Oh, you just need to love better. You need to sacrifice more. Just love more." I'm like, "I don't know what else I could do." "Oh, do exactly what she says. You're the servant leader.
They always
You
say that.
just." Well, she would be the one to call. I didn't want really them to get involved. Every once in a while, I get really pissed, and I'd say something out in front of everyone. I'm like, "Well, why don't you anymore?" And I'd get my piece, I'd storm off, and I'd drive around town, I'd get chill out, and they're like, "Oh," I'm like, "No, I just realized I need to get bearing on myself, and I don't need to be in this situation." So, then I'd redress it. But yeah, they call the elders, they do all that crap. Oh, and what happened to me is then she starts saying like, the facial hair. "Oh, that's abusive. I don't like it. It irritates my skin. It's abusive when he kisses me." "Oh,
Seriously?
it's it's abusive because I wanted to have intercourse with my wife." "Oh, it's abusive to say that I don't like short hair and I don't want you to cut your hair short." "Oh, it's abusive that, I insist on something be done in the house. I'm just controlling." Like, "Hey, should change diapers, not let them run around and crap for hours when I'm at work. And hey, maybe you should take the kids out of the street while I'm working, and I shouldn't be called at the church about the kids about to get run over in the middle of the street." Oh, stuff like that. Oh yeah, so they also false DV. She's so quarrelsome. I took her phone to check her phone because she had been suspicious. Everything was dry. She'd always hang the phone up face down. She'd delete text messages when I tried to look over. Then she had a privacy screen on her phone. And then there's a lot of trip she was going on, stories without me, running around town, talking to other people about me. It's just poisoning the whole church and everybody without me knowing. I had no idea till the end. Yeah, so I grabbed the phone. She tried tackling me, hitting me, and I did what I usually did. I got the hell out of there. I ran to the church, locked all the doors, and wanted to be left alone. Oh, but no, here come the police. They come in, have lasers on my chest, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" Hey, I wasn't even sure what they were there for, but I have lasers on my chest, lady shrieking at me. I think I'm about to get, unalived here. Well, I probably said words I shouldn't have said on YouTube. Oh, I try to be careful. But yeah, it's a historical incident and it happened. And yeah, got hauled off to jail. And there's other stuff that happened, but you see the point of a quarrelsome wife.
Uh-oh,
And did the
Nick.
church do anything? What?
You went to the slammer, man. That makes you an automatic bad man.
Oh,
that's fine. I don't care.
Doesn't matter. My first wife, went to jail. And she got out. They never wanted to prosecute her. My body was scratched up and bloody. They let her off without anything. It was felony assault. One other thing I want to mention. Nick described a BPD woman, borderline personality disorder. Yes, my first wife, undiagnosed, but it was it was fights and shouting, and she'd just go ballistic over the littlest things. But they are known, the BPD women are known for being able to love bomb you and just make you think you're the best guy who ever walked the planet. And then they can turn around and just go off the rails nuts. And it is so confusing to the non BPD. It actually messes with your brain. You don't know what reality is anymore because you bring something up and they twist it around on you and you swear, no, that's not the way I remember it. It's like gaslighting 24/7. So if you're in one of those relationships, I will guarantee you're not thinking straight. You won't know what hit you. It will take you about 2 to 3 years to unscramble your brain after you're away from her, but you're actually trauma bonded to her while you're with her. And he is very manipulative, and you see a certain side of her at home. He does not present that same side to other people. He can be so charming and sweet to others, but so nasty at home. No one will believe you when you say what she's really like. And yeah, you're not thinking straight at all.
It's your
You don't
fault.
even know.
The church says
It's your fault. And you're thinking, oh, if only I don't trigger her. Maybe I can do better next time.
Yeah.
So you're always second guessing yourself to try and stop triggering her rages. Never works. You're thinking down the wrong path. Okay, in this situation, sorry. The woman has a cluster B personality disorder. BPD is the worst. I think my second wife had didn't have that, but then as it turns out, it kind of became covert, malicious narcissist. Covert because it can be hidden for a long time. And then when it comes out, it's just, that's it. But if you happen to be with a cluster B woman, don't hold out any hope for a normal life. The best thing, even the psychologists who specialize in those people, they say, yeah, you best just get away.
Well, I'll go here. I'll go the counseling for me and the church. So the church tried to shove down a counselor on me, and I refused. The elders, so the presbytery highly recommended or strongly recommended because there's no biblical warrant for it. But yeah, the church does have authority. They are the ones who should be actually advising, men and women. Um, And we did some like biblical marriage groups, like we did re-engage for a long time. They never addressed the true underlying problems of most women. And they make all these men into be these effeminate simps. Not all of them, but a lot of effeminate simping, where they're the servant leaders. They never directly address the problems of their wives. Anyway, so I did that. I got a lot better. I got something out of it for me, even though the simping, I started realizing at the end, this is not good. But she never really improved. Also, the church. So they back to the presbytery. They strongly advised me. The elder board said, "Oh, you need to get a counselor." I was like, "Why?" And then the elders at the local church, which I was a pastor of, they started basically power playing me to do it, or else it seemed that I have to do this. And then the whole time, I finally agreed. I finally agreed to do it, right? And there's a questionnaire. And I filled it out. She didn't want to fill out hers. And when I saw it the day after the DV, because we were supposed to do a counseling session, the first counseling session, the day after the DV, right? False DV. And her feelings, it says, I will obey the Bible except when I feel they're wrong.
I don't think that's how this works. I don't think that's how any of this works.
Oh, they all threw me under the bus. The church like accused me of things. They sent out a letter that was not approved by the session or reviewed by me. They didn't even speak to me before throwing me under the bus. And then they didn't do any judicial proceedings after I had filed what's it called? Charges, ecclesiastical charges, disciplinary charges for her abandonment, where she left. She had gone. She had planned it. I had photos and text messages, and they did not proceed against her. No, in fact, while I was a minister in good standing in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, they gave her letters of standing where she could effectively transfer my kids, her and my kids, without talking to me first, away from me to another church, and I had no say. The father, the pastor, had no say. And since we're talking about being a pastor, it says in the Westminster Confession that nothing but adultery or such willful desertion as can no way be remedied by the church, the civil magistrate, is cause sufficient of dissolving the bond of marriage. There should be an orderly course of proceeding. Well, guess what? Where was my proceeding? I tried. They didn't do crap. In fact, they make it worse. They enable this shit and then pat themselves on the back. Oh, we helped her against this bad man, these effeminate simps. They can't even follow their own doctrine. Oh, like they have supposed to censure in Westminster Confession, chapter 30. And we have a book about discipline that they can't even follow. What pieces of crap. What wicked shepherds. You enabled a man's kids to be taken from him. You throw him under the bus. You fail to discipline the offending party. Such wicked, evil, gutless men. There we go. There's my story. Now we'll talk about church discipline and counseling further, unless you guys have something you want to add there.
It's a good cutoff point. We could
Yeah,
go on about this stuff for hours.
We
All right,
could, but
let's
that
keep.
is not our purpose here.
Right.
Yeah. So we should. All right. Well, we shared our story, so now we move on to church discipline and counseling. So marriage counseling is proper from a pastor on what the Bible says in advice, though you should be aware of their interpretations being colored by white knighting and feminism, even complementarianism, which is feminism with the better face to it. There are unbiblical paradigms that you, as a masculine, godly man in Christ, cannot submit to, which would be to destroy your own masculinity, marriage, and ultimately be a dishonor to Christ. You cannot agree to women insisting, contrary to your standing as a husband, to work outside the home. Ladies' night out. Now, okay, I get it. You want to give her a break and all that. That's fine. Let her hang with friends, but not out in public at restaurants, bars, dance halls, all that crap where they're going to get hit on and picked up on by other women.
Nick, didn't church?
Servant,
Well, but
what are you
you're
going to say?
talking about where women should go out. Didn't it used to be that women would go out with other church women? They would the churches had, they had places where women could go. Like that was a church thing that women could go be with other church women and not hanging their titties across the bar, at 1 a.m.
Right? Oh, but that's just controlling.
How about they do
How
what
about
women did when they got together about 60, 70 years, 60 years ago? Since they only had one car in the family, they would meet at the grocery store or pick up another woman and go to the grocery store and go grocery shopping together. Now, I think that's a good, wholesome activity for women to go do together.
they used to have a thing called growler runs. They wouldn't go into the bar. They take a growler, they fill it up, go home, and they'd have that with their girlfriend. Yeah.
Hey Nick,
Servant leadership. What were you talking
we've got a comment from X on your for coming in from your X link over here. I'll throw it up on the screen.
Okay. Ah. Hmm. I can't say there's a warrant for getting out of the institutional church, but you don't have to place your trust there. And you need
The
to hedge against them. I still go to church.
ind-
Just
the independent churches have no authority over them and no real creed and doctrine. There's a lot of wackiness. I'd rather be in an institution that has some tradition, even if they don't follow it very well, than being out freelancing and making shit up as you go.
Okay, so I am the only one here who does not actively go to church, and I understand where Nick is coming from, and I understand where Steve is coming from. However, my view of institutional anything right now is very, very low. So what I would say is, Steve, I like where you're going, and if the institutions themselves were better, I might co-sign on that. But right now, and we'll talk about this a lot more in the future in a bigger, not just church sense, we should be working on, frankly, dismantling the institutions. Not because the institutions are bad, or the concept of the institutions are bad, but because the only way I know to get dry rot out of the studs in a house is to just to start hacking away. And now
there needs to
that's
be a strong arm to fix things. Otherwise,
yeah. Right
it's
now,
not
that
gonna.
said, it's a lot easier to do that if you're operating inside the church. So there I kind of agree with Nick a little bit, and Steve. And okay, it's not the institution that's going to save you, but that doesn't mean that you leave. What it means is that you become aware and informed of what that institution actually is and actually will do to you, and you work against that. And that could be, oh, get yourself a spot. Okay, in the Presbytery, we called it the session. Okay, and I don't know what what the Catholic Church has, but I'm sure there are some sort of bodies of elders that for individual churches. Okay, get yourselves involved with these things and start. You don't have to go fire and brimstone, and it probably won't work. I know, Nick, you really want to go fire and brimstone, but when these situations come up, because divorce will come up in the church you're in, just start asking the questions. We have the one of the benefits of talking about our stories is that you guys can learn what other men go through, and you can say, you know what, I need to ask this question to this couple, and then your church can see, oh shit, we got a problem over here. There are many ways to influence the outcomes of institutions. All of them require that you be there.
It's almost so common and prevalent that the man gets thrown under the bus. It's just by default taking the man's side and asking questions that way. You're probably going to be right. 70-80% of the time. Yeah, okay. Maybe it's that other percentage where he actually did cheat on her. Okay. Doesn't mean she's blameless. She might have been withholding sex. The number of those alpha guys who just are out there to have their fun or not be responsible, they're actually, I'd say, 20% of men
or less,
even lower. So you know what, just by default saying, hold on a minute, we don't have the big picture here, I think there's something wrong here, I'm going to take the man's side unless proven otherwise. That's biblical. The man, the husband, has the authority. So just go. He's got the authority by the virtue of the vows. She agreed.
Yep.
And if she didn't know what she was doing, support the man. You are on the side of God and the oath, and you're going to be on the right side most of the time. The times that you're on the wrong side, it's probably going to be 50-50.
Well, and
Now,
here's the thing. You'll be able to figure out when you're on the wrong side. And the other thing is, be careful. And so Nick did a video. Well, Nick led a video where we talked about, is corn really the problem in relationships? And we actually went through a lot of the things to look for when it is a problem versus, start asking questions like, did you start this before or after the bedroom dried up? That question radically alters the equation, right? So, okay, yeah, there are going to be some guys out there who they really do have a problem with it, where, or Nick talked about, or sorry, Steve was talking about, oh, we've got these alpha guys that, yeah, they're just going to want to go do multiple women. It's not going to be very hard to figure out who those guys are. Men don't lie like women do. And they're terrible at hiding their shit.
most men are pretty poor liars, pretty bad at it.
Right.
Yep.
So, even if you get even if your initial position of defending the man is wrong, the evidence will appear in the process of discovery. By this, what the church has done by defaulting to supporting the woman is it has erased the discovery process. So if you're a man in a church, get yourself in a position. It could, in the Presbyterian, you have deacons and elders. Get yourself just as a deacon. Okay, that's all. get yourself involved in the hierarchy of the church. And when these questions start coming up, and they will, my church went through a number of divorces, some of them very high profile in the church. Start asking the questions. And I'm also going to say this because my dad went through this. When you start asking the questions, you are going to get an incredible amount of heat from the rest of the session.
You will. Because it's against their whole paradigm.
And
They have
well, I would say, and
and
listen,
bad.
and I would say listen to Nick, because he can help you, and reach out to him if you need to. He can help you answer their questions because he lived that life. He knows those power structures. He knows how they operate. He knows how to respond to these questions and this pushback they give.
Right.
Sorry, Nick, I know I'm soapboxing on you here, but
No,
I'll
it's
let you
fine.
have the floor now.
All right.
I just want to get people involved, like actually out there working on this stuff.
Absolutely have to. You have to implement it. So women insisting on working outside the home. Ladies' night out. We talked about servant leadership. It's bullshit. You have the right to rule. Don't submit to the denial of a husband's right to rule. You have authority, and the wife does have a duty to submit and obey. Yeah, you shouldn't be bitter, and you should love her. Absolutely. But just loving her doesn't mean that you do what she tells you to do. Sometimes what she's doing is wrong, or her suggestions may be sometimes wrong. Sometimes they might be right. And, you should probably listen to what she has to say on certain things. But you have the right to rule and you have the authority, not just responsibility. There is a hierarchy. You are the head of the household. You are the superior of the household. Yes, woman is, equally valuable in dignity and value, but she is subordinate, ordered under. She's inferior according to rank. Don't submit to the abuse lists. They can put anything as abuse. We've talked about that earlier with my story. Financial, no. You can make
Okay,
that mean anything.
I got to bring this up. I want to say both my ex-wives did not work outside of the home most of the time. I mean, there was first wife before we adopted kids. She had a job. Second wife, when I was unemployed for about 6 weeks between trucking jobs. Now I'm stable again. It was, trivial or a short time. She got a part-time job for a while. But if a woman is not working and you get divorced and she has a degree, you, the man, automatically deprived her of the ability to work. Now he's supposed to pay alimony. And, you have this joint checkbook, but only one person earning. Yeah, that's kind of a problem. So, although I agree that the wife, well, the mother should stay home, even the wife, and not work. That's problematical from a modern legal perspective. Now, do I want my kids in daycare? Hell no. And that didn't happen with me. So this is a delicate area. I mean, Nick is right. The woman should not work outside of the home. But man, that one's not cut and dry, simple in our modern world.
It's not. But I'm saying if she insists and you don't want her to, and you don't need her to,
Yeah. Don't,
That's
guys,
a red
be
flag.
devious here. Be manipulative. Do not overtly insist. So you're going to have to say under oath that you didn't want her to work because now you're liable. Talk about in an ideal world, this is how you want your life to be. You're going to have to use some gentle dominance to accomplish some of these things. In other areas, you do want to use some overt dominance. Get her used to following your rules. Because if you give up your authority by accommodating her all the time, she's going to get used to that. You will not be able to take back your authority when, oh, all of a sudden now I need my authority. Things
It's
are
already
going bad.
gone.
I'm going to take it back. Nope. You let it go.
It's already gone.
It's gone. So early on, you got to practice this dynamic about commanding her. And I'm going to use some strong words. Commanding her, ordering her, because that's obedience. That's leadership. Now, I'm not talking about tyrannical things, but you got to establish that you got to be the alpha dog.
Well,
Because if you're, go ahead, Plutarch.
I just want to point out for the record that Steve was very careful there, and to point out that yes, we're red pill guys, but no, we're not saying that overt power and tyranny is always the right way to deal with women. In fact, I don't think you'll find a red pill guy who does. And I just want that on the record that we're not we're not advocating for just being domineering tyrants.
Don't they call like the drunken captain or something like that?
I
But
I don't remember, but
well,
it's
anyways,
just yeah.
and
Hey, I mean,
don't
you can use some game here. Let's say the laundry's piled up for a couple days. Before you leave for work, kiss her and say, honey, do the laundry today. And slap her butt. Okay, that's a command. Then hopefully she does it. Then when you get home, you damn well better make sure you recognize it and say, wow, great job, good girl. Or whatever words of affirmation work for you. You don't have to use that, might not be appropriate. I don't typically use that. But the sentiment is give her a good girl. Okay, you have the attaboy, which we use as kind of a acronym for acknowledging you did something good. Yeah, I got an attaboy at work. Did they say attaboy? No. Give her a good girl when you get home. Now you've reinforced that, and she lives for those kind of affirmations. And, it's, you told her to do something, she did it, she gets praised. Is she going to want to do it again? Oh, yeah, she wants your praise.
good advice, Steve. So, talking about the slap on the butt, yeah, this is not the abuse. It's playful, but also it leads into another thing that you're not to put up with. This is an unbiblical paradigm, the denial of sex. It's contrary to 1 Corinthians 7. We've talked about that. But if you're Presbyterian, right, it's actually contrary to the Westminster Larger Catechism, questions 138 and 139. You can look them up if you want. But that's a wrong paradigm. Don't submit to it. Don't, when the elders and the counselors say that, you say, no, it is right to want to have this. You know, we'll get into, perhaps there's other, you don't want to have the covert contract. You don't want to have like in where she doesn't have any desire for you because you're just demanding it. But the fact that you had to get to a point to demanding it means there's a previous problem, maybe on your part or perhaps hers or both. But anyways, another one. Don't submit to the fact that they call you mean and unloving because you held her accountable with the truth. Don't put up with that bullshit. Also, don't put up with the straying off topic of actual sins by deflections and bringing up a bunch of shit from the past as justifications to shift the current blame. Don't put up with that bullshit. If you're in the counseling session, she's with you for the elders. No. stay on one topic at a time.
Let me suggest something. You're in this counseling session. It's still, you still have your authority. Husband is still over wife. They
Mhm.
don't walk into the pastor's office and become equals. No, no one can take away that authority. It's biblical. Christ, husband, wife.
Right.
I mean, that's the order. So okay, they're not gonna do that. The pastor's not gonna remember this, but you need to remember this. You still have the authority, and your wife is not your equal in that session. Keep that mentally here and realize that just because they're telling you something does not mean they have authority over you in that area. The church really has no authority over you as to how you relate to your wife, assuming you're doing your duties, well. Would you agree with that, Nick?
If you're doing what's biblical, they should get the hell out. Butt out.
Right. So they can't tell you, oh, you need to be nice to her. If you're already being nice and you're providing and you're trying all this stuff, they have no authority. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying be defiant and not listen, but in some ways, what they're telling you can be a matter of counsel. In some areas, it can be a matter of authority.
Guys, I think just to shorten up what Steve was saying, the church sitting in between the relationship of a man and woman has no authority. They cannot tell you what to do. They can offer suggestions, and
Like they can demand what the Bible says
right.
and say, you're sinning. And if you don't stop, we'll put you under discipline. But they
Okay,
only
right.
tend to do that against the man and never against the woman.
Well, yes. Okay. So what we're saying is that the church's authority is restricted here. Okay. They can't come in and say, "Oh, well, you just need to do whatever she says," because the Bible does not say that.
No.
Okay. So if the church is if your counselor or whatnot or pastor or whoever is telling you, "Oh, you just need to do this for her, you need to do that for her," it's like, okay, that is a recommendation that the counselor thinks may resolve the situation. Now, they think that because they've been taught the feminist form of counseling, and we've debunked this many, many times on the channel elsewhere. But it does not, these things do, even if it comes from your pastor, because it's not a biblical admonition, it is a suggestion. And you can go, nah, I'm good.
Can I just came up with a perfect analogy here. Most of us men have jobs and you got a supervisor and he has a supervisor, manager, president, vice president. Can you imagine if you're in the same office, it's you and your immediate supervisor in the office of the manager, president, whatever, and the president chastising your supervisor about something he did with you in your presence. Can you imagine that? That's totally
Disrespectful.
inappropriate.
Yeah, it
Disrespectful.
undermines.
No,
It undermines
if
everything.
I'm the underling, I'm not to be present when my supervisor is called on the carpet. I don't want to be there. Not my role. And if that's done, and if I was a supervisor and someone underneath me and I get an ass chewing, I'm gonna be pissed off. You can chew my ass, yeah, but not in the presence of my underling. And it should be the same. Okay, you can understand that. That's just common sense, right? Well, it
Yep.
should be the
Have
same
respect for the
thing with the
hierarchy.
church.
Yep. They should respect the hierarchy. But what happens is the counseling in society and churches, you can read it, I got it here. Women, we have to remember though, women are enabled by family, church, society, and government to leave their husbands. So you're going to marital counseling, everything is in her favor to leave you. The husband by God is the authority, but his authority is usurped on every front, even in front of the pastors sometimes or elders and the counselor. I wrote this in my book before I got zeroed out. I was still married when I wrote this, about a month before I got zeroed out, before shit hit the fan. I said, the government owns us. The government is father or big brother. The government demands fathers to be inferiors before the law and mothers to be superiors. Look at divorce and child custody law. Man, was that not prophetic? Meanwhile, the illegitimate and legitimate kids owned by the government are raised by the daycare workers, being their true mothers. The true head of household in America is the government, with mothers being superiors over the children in obedience to the government. Fathers and men are but pretenders of authority. If they seek to exercise it, they're labeled as chauvinists, misogynists, sexists, and bigots. Their wives are indoctrinated to overthrow the authority of their husbands by schools, government, media, family, friends, and even the church. In such an environment of our society, marriage counseling furthers the effeminacy of men by castrating husbands. Such marriage counseling validates the egalitarian charge of abuse carried out by feminist wives towards husbands, as traditional and biblical husbands insist on maintaining their authority. Even Christian counseling or therapy comes across in many cases with a feminist confirmation bias, which is full of suggestion against husbands acting as men. The churches have furthered this effeminacy of men and disintegration of the family by their egalitarianism and feminist simping for women, a bunch of white knights. So that's in my book, The Abomination of the Egalitarian Levelers. Oh, Rollo's got a few things about counseling in the church. Other times, a married long term couple may go to couples counseling to resolve their sex issues and negotiate terms for her sexual compliance. He'll promise to do the dishes and a load of laundry, more often in exchange for her feigned sexual interest in him. Yet, no matter what terms are offered, no matter how great an external effort he makes, so deserving of reward, the genuine desire is not there for her. In fact, she feels worse for not having the desire after such efforts are made for her compliance. Her desire has become an obligation. Negotiated desire only leads to obligated compliance. This is why her post negotiation sexual response is often so lackluster and the source of even further frustration on this part. And he's got another quote that's in his original book. And also, he says, hypergamy doesn't care about relational equity. This is a really tough truth for guys to swallow because knowing how hypergamy works necessarily devalues their concept of relational equity with the woman they're committed to or considering commitment with. Men's concept of relational equity stems from a mindset that accepts a negotiated desire, not genuine desire, as a valid means of relationship security. This is precisely why most couples counseling fails. Its operative origin begins from the misconception that genuine desire, hypergamy, can be negotiated indefinitely. That's again the Rollo Tomasi.
So that first quote by Rollo there, that was pretty much
Yeah.
exactly the end of my marriage and what she was asking for. That's
Mhm.
pretty much it. That's exactly it. Chore play.
I just
doesn't
had
work.
some insight on this chore play thing. So, as I said, when women reach the age of settling down, late 20s, and they love bomb you, most actually sex bomb you to get married. And I said, yeah, she's really not that into you. But it seems like it. How did she do it then? But now you can't get it. Well, remember, you had something she wanted, marriage, ring, commitment. She was striving to get it. So now you're going to try and get it by negotiating to, I'll do chore play, and then you're going to be desired. No, she's not striving for something. On the other hand, if you have the money, and there's women in marriages who do this. The man controls the money. They might not be into him that much, but in order to get access to the money, they put out because that's their goal.
Mm.
So you notice that's a different dynamic than I'll do chores if I get sex to, yeah, I'll give you some money if we have sex. There's a different power dynamic there. I'm just saying.
Well, guys, I think the church is missing the picture. They don't want to understand women's nature, and they keep blaming the men for everything. We'll touch on desire here a little later. We're probably going to run a little late today, but oh well. I found this clip by George Bruno. You guys should subscribe to George Bruno on YouTube. He's got some really good stuff. I think he's at Listen My Son. So good guy. He's got some great advice. Here's his take on uh marriage counseling. Oh, sorry, the volume's off. I gotta turn the volume on. There we go.
For your marriage, if the woman wants a divorce, like in Pennsylvania, you have the right to 3 or 5 marital counseling sessions. The court can order this. And as a therapist and someone who has been to a therapist, I remember a therapist telling me through my divorce proceeding, he said his exact words were, that is a very tough debt to collect, to force someone to go for counseling and then try to convince them to stay married. He says, in all my years, and he was probably 15 years older than me, and he was a therapist for 15 more years than me. So I was a therapist for over 20 years. He had probably been in the business 35 years at that time. And he said, in all of his years of practicing and working with the courts, the family court system, that he had never ever seen a couple reconcile after the woman is court ordered to go for marital counseling. And that's why I say divorce fast.
All right, guys.
That's kind of what I said.
Oh.
Pull the trigger quick, guys. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying it's a good thing. But you heard it from a guy who did this for a living. If you go to counseling, if the church says, "Oh, well, we require counseling before the divorce," you know what you do? You go do the mandatory counseling, but you accept that she ain't going to reconcile, and that if she does, she's just playing for time. You go do the mandatory counseling, and then you go file when it's done. It is,
Yeah, well, pack your parachute
before
you're ordered to go to counseling. And who was it that said, whose phrase is it? You can't negotiate desire.
That's a Rolloism.
I think
That's a Rollo.
Yeah.
Okay. Easter is right. You can't. Pack your parachute, guys.
Right.
Yep.
Because you know what? You're in an airplane far above ground. It sucks to be pushed
And nobody
out of the
can
plane
make her
without
stay.
a parachute.
Nobody can make her stay. She's rewarded to leave most of the time. You can't make her stay.
Okay, and for guys out there, the church cannot make her stay, even if it wanted to. It doesn't want to. It doesn't. The church only cares about her staying at the church. Whether or not she stays with you is of far less concern to the church financially. But even if the church wanted to make her stay with you, it can't. I mean, we're not allowed to create hostage situations. But what is the church actually going to do? The state owns the whole process. She just goes to the lawyer, files the paperwork, and the church has to go, well, that happened.
Guys, yeah, you can't negotiate genuine desire. She's going to leave. She's going to leave. You may, in the rare instance, get a church actually to have discipline against her. There's a few cases I've seen, but extremely rare in
And
compared to the
usually
data.
egregious, like she's done something overtly heinous. I
Right.
actually did see this in my church once, and it was she cheated on. He was a brand new pastor, fresh out of the Bible college. Came up to our church as an associate pastor. She cheats on him pretty openly with the music director at the church. And at this point, they
Heard those
had to,
stories.
they had to step in and discipline her because there was no hiding who it was, who started the cheat. Like, you could not hide any of it. So the church did step in and discipline her and kicked her out.
But
What?
what can you do?
You mean
what are some solutions?
You mean even pastors marry promiscuous women?
Yes, they do. And this poor guy was just destroyed by this whole thing. He actually did end up with custody of the kids. She basically ended up but that was because she gave it to him. She wanted so far out of the relationship that she didn't even want to keep her kids. So at least he ended up with custody of the kids, but this thing destroyed him. It was, the church was really my dad was associated with this, so I heard the stories from the leadership side of it, and the church was desperately trying not to deal with this. They were desperately trying to make it go away, but what ended up happening was the woman, once the story came out, actually publicly flaunted herself with the guy, and so the church could not ignore it anymore. And I don't know, we don't know, we still to this day don't know what was going on in her head and why she thought any of this would be a good idea to publicly backlash against the church like that. Like, of course they're going to come for you. Now you have made them, you've embarrassed them. It's not that you made a mockery of the church or the Bible. Yes, you did that. It's you publicly embarrassed the leadership now. And that was what actually got the church to really get involved. So it does happen, but it's rare, and it requires just egregious, horrific actions on the part of the women that the church cannot ignore.
So, yeah, they might send this crap happens. And it's usually the public stuff that they're gonna do discipline. But what can you do to defend yourself when you're being thrown under the bus by these white knights and simps? What are ways you can challenge the counselors, pastors, and elders who white knight and simp under the gynocentric worldview, enforcing this feminist imperative? I've got some notes here. Be versed in scripture. So know the system. Be versed in scripture. Don't take their overly complex explanations. The original audience of the Bible were common people, and they are generally able to understand the Bible. Not everything, but I think they understood marriage. Some basic crap, right? Ask them to support their answers to you by traditional interpretations previous to feminism and not known heretics like the Gnostics, Antinomians, Anabaptists, Quakers, Unitarians, and even beware of Methodism. For instance, Tertullian, Augustine, Chrysostom, early church fathers, medieval works and treatises. There's canons out there. There's Thomas Aquinas. There's Lombard sentences. And there's a lot of reformers and Puritans like Samuel Rutherford, William Gouge, John Calvin, Luther, Zwingli, Zanke, Vermigli, Owen, Richard Baxter, Matthew Henry. He's got a big commentary. So does Matthew Poole. They talk about this stuff. Oh, and this will really make them mad. So de jure divino is like divine right government, right? It's but what God prescribes. So if you're Presbyterian Reform, you follow what's expressly given in the Bible or by good and necessary consequence. There is no office of Christian counselor. Get that in your mind. There is no office of Christian counselor. Yeah, the pastor can counsel, but he can't just pawn you off and you have to do it. There is no office in the Bible for Christian counselor. There's zero warrant. There's zero warrant for requiring under threat, strongly advising a man to check his balls in. This Christian counseling, I would generally say, is made up bullshit for marriages failing due to feminism and unchecked hypergamy. This is a form of longhousing by effeminate quacks to control masculine men and excuse rebellious women. Checking into Christian counseling is a way to abdicate rule by pastors and further can enable the rebellious wife to rebel and disrespect her husband. Christian counseling has not an inherent hierarchy except by your own voluntary consent. Why consent to an institution that has no mandate and is set up to destroy men?
That's exactly where you go into counseling. Everybody has a perception. Oh, husband and wife go in as equals before the counselor.
No.
Okay, you've already lost. Because you are not your wife's equal. You are her superior. Get that through your mind. I mean you're a tyrant, but you are her superior. You are the authority over her. There is a hierarchy. The hierarchy is not left outside the door when you go into counseling.
Exactly. So these are ways you can use their own system against them in the church. Now, you also need to understand the temptations of the wife and feminism and modern Christianity. I got this from Stephen Casper's The Biblical Masculinity Blueprint. It's got some red pill truths in there. He's trying to be a biblical guy. So it's a fairly good read. Rebellion, usurpation, henpecking, disrespect, contempt, vanity, overspending, coveting other marriages, withholding sex. And then he says, to be lazy at home, stingy with love, and prioritize working outside of the home as opposed to their own husbands and children. So you want solutions and answers, know their common temptations, know how to use the system, the Christian system, against these quacks, these effeminate quacks, these Christian counselors, and the white knighting, simping elders and pastors. Now, concluding solutions and answers. This is a good roll up. You need to know your enemy. You need to know what you're dealing with. We've talked about it enough, but this is a great long quote, and I'll read it. The real world risks that modern marriage presents to men today are dispelled by religious idealism. Marriage becomes a literal leap of faith. Once he gets into marriage and his approved expression of sexuality, the religious man finds that the feminized church, even the male elders, expect endless qualifications and deference to his wife's unceasing appeasement in exchange for that approved sex. It's a tail chasing that holds men to the old order expectations while absolving women of accountability and expecting him to also make concessions for a new feminized social order that saturated church cultures. Christian marriage divorce rates are only a few paltry percentage points lower than the secular world. Male religious leaders blame men for not leading, not being holy enough, not bold and biblical enough, not going to bed exhausted every night, not getting up early enough, and a pile of other excuses for why she had no choice but to end the marriage. In response, we see a whole cottage industry of Christian counseling and self help books develop, usually written for and by women. We see the rise of women's ministry grifts in the new hustle economy. We have conferences, TV channels, broadcast networks, podcasts, radio stations, outreach groups, a glut of churches in this country and the internet. The Rational Male, that's Religion by Rollo Tomassi. Know your enemy. Know your enemy. which is the feminized church. They are not on your side. They've been taken over. And you can also see how to know your enemy. And I have a chapter in my book, The Abomination of Egalitarian Levelers. I call it the enemy's playbook, how they want to deconstruct traditional roles of men and women or deconstruct the patriarchy. So, solutions: know your enemy, know what's going against you, be fit. What do you guys think about that, being fit? Is that a solution? Is that an answer in any way?
It helps.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt, but here's what I would say on this particular one. Don't make this into an idol either, because it is not enough.
Hey, even the athletes, the 6'4" professional athletes, spend time in the gym. Hey, their wives cheat too. So yeah, it's important. You don't have to have a six pack.
You don't need to be a
But, you know,
bodybuilder.
You also need to be fit so that, hey, maybe that's the reason why she doesn't desire you anymore. Maybe that's why she's so quarrelsome. It could be you in that area. And she's reacting with her emotions and everything
hey,
else.
Nick, it's
Yeah.
not the reason. It's a contributing factor. I mean, yes, in the case, 300 pounds. Okay, it might be the reason. Okay, well, no, he's got an extra 30. He's carrying around an extra 30 pounds. Yeah, it's a factor, but it's not the reason all
Well,
by itself.
and I think that we need to be wary as men of other men telling us that it is the factor, because that can send us down the road of thinking that all we have to do is fix ourselves, and then women will just swoon for us. Yeah,
No,
boys,
we'll
that
get
ain't
to
how
that.
this
This
works.
doesn't work. So yeah, be fit. Okay, don't go crazy. Yeah, if you want to, that's on you.
Yeah.
Be successful. Be on your own mission.
I actually like be on your own mission better, because successful has many, many, many definitions, even to women.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
But if you're doing your own thing, you're doing your own mission, you've got your own program that you're running, she can decide whether or not she wants to get on board with that. And you know what, guys? A lot of them won't. Your mission is yours, not hers. And if you pursue your mission, and you have the ability and the time to actually do it, the success will follow. Success is hard work with paired with knowledge and intention.
There's too much emphasis on this. Be successful. Most guys are just work. You're going to work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
40-hour a week guy, working class guy, office guy, yeah, you might move up a little bit, or you might be a tradesman or a union guy. You're just going to put in your time, your 40 hours, 50 hours a week with some overtime. And if you like what you're doing and you take pride in your work, you're successful. Even if you're only making 60, 75, 80 grand. Hey, you're on your mission. You don't have to be making over $100,000 to be successful in by somebody else's description. If you like your life, that's enough.
So I left this out of my story, but in the final 6 months of my first marriage, I was actually in the process of significantly leveling up my career. I had just a few months before made a significant pay jump, and at the time she announced that we wanted to get divorced, I had just 2 months before made another pay jump, another significant. I mean, we're talking 30% pay jump here. Like, I was making a lot more money. And I had just done this 2 months before she decided she wanted all the way out. Okay. The idea that just being successful is somehow going to take a contentious woman and turn her into, oh, honestly, if I had to say that anything about the red pill messaging that I disagree with more than anything else, this would be it. Your success can help you find a woman, but it cannot help you
Okay.
keep them. There is no guarantee that it will. And honestly, there's a bit of a trap here for men too, because if you find a woman who is attracted to your success, the moment you stop succeeding, she'll lose that attraction for you.
He's gone. Yeah.
And
There's a lot of guys who get divorced when he's between jobs or he gets laid off. And if she married you for your success, all of a sudden you're laid off 6 months before you find another job. He might not love you during that time. She might leave you.
there's a very high chance she will. What a woman should be, what you want to see in a woman is she's not at you for your success that you already have. She wants you for your potential. I heard this back when I was in flight school, but there was a saying that we told every pilot, and it was, because pilots are famous for getting divorced and cheating. You keep your flight instructor wife, your first officer house, and your captain's car. And note that those are in descending order of value. But the idea is that you wanted the woman who was with you when you were making the lowest amount of money, but could see your potential for the future. Because captains at airlines make $300,000 now. That's a lot of money. And if she stuck with you when you were making $10 an hour flying around students, and she stuck with you through all that grinding up to way to $300,000 a year captain, yeah, okay, that's probably a woman of some value. But this idea that you're just going to get that being successful is going to bring women, I would say almost that's actually going to bring you the wrong kind of woman.
So it would have been better if I put be on your mission, but that's what I was thinking.
Well, yeah.
That's
Hey,
fine.
that's what we're here for. We'll figure this stuff out.
And that's for you. So you're not defined by her.
Correct.
Because that actually leans into game, frame, and dread. So game is just basically, you know how to interact with women. You know how to escalate.
Frame is just about
game.
being in charge, maintaining your authority, and not giving it away.
Yep. And what's dread?
You're a man with options. He comes into your life. He comes on your adventure. You're not going on hers. And if your path she's not following, you know what? Someone else can come along and follow.
There you go.
You don't need her. I'm putting it in a gentle way.
Were you going to say something there, Plutarch?
Actually, I'm responding to this quote by or this comment by Colonel.
Okay.
I was going to respond in the chat, but it got thrown up here, which is probably my wife doing it. Women used to be attracted to men that can fix things. Now we've trained our women to be attracted to lifestyle. And I do believe this is a training thing, because there's lots of generations where what you're saying is absolutely true. And you mentioned earlier that you're a master auto tech. They've actually done studies on this, and automotive technicians are consistently rated now as some of the least desirable men in the dating market. They work on those ugly cars that spew out all that evil carbon dioxide. They smell bad all the time. They got greasy fingers. If you're a woman chasing a lifestyle, why would you want any of that?
Okay.
And you know what else? He spends all his money on tools. Ah, how boring.
Oh yeah, they have like this. They have to always be entertained now, especially with the social media and he can't keep up.
Yep. Hey, Nick, did you
Oh,
mean to take
also,
your list off the screen here?
I'll put it back up. I'll put it back up. Yeah. Don't be Mr. Nice Guy. We talked about that on Effeminate Men, I think. Yeah, so don't be a pushover. Stand up for what you have standards and don't when people cross the line, don't keep backing up. Um, don't try to always make everyone happy. Anybody else have anything about Mr. Nice Guy? Yeah, niceness is not kindness. Kindness is not niceness. It's different.
No, this one I just agree with.
Okay. No covert contracts. Don't be Mr. Nice Guy.
Read the book by Dr.
Yep.
Robert Glover. Seriously, you're going through a divorce, read the damn book, or even before divorce, because it'll help.
Have standards and uphold them kind of goes with frame and don't be Mr. Nice Guy. Don't submit to bullshit compromising church ways. Don't. If they tell you to do something and it's wrong, don't do it. Submit to Christ. Only submit as far as they teach the truth of God. Beware the sisterhood.
Even at church,
So this
the,
is
the sisterhood exists at
answers.
church.
Yep, that could be the women's Bible study.
Yes.
Beware. They are probably involved. If your quarrelsome has gotten so to the point that there's quarrelsomeness has gotten to the point where the church and the counselors are involved, guarantee you there's probably something there in the sisterhood. They're probably feeding this monster.
Oh, yes. And they also brought up to speed on the narrative, and they will support the narrative against you. They all speak with one voice, and they all cluster around to support. So don't expect any truth or assistance coming from any woman, probably including your mother.
Beware the sisterhood. They are the enforcers of the gynocentric social order, the feminine imperative. How dare that mean? Beware of Team Woman, as Seven Man's article has. You can find Team Woman, Seven Man's article. Read that. Beware of Team Woman. But also, guys, yeah, we're Christians here. Pray. There is the power of God. There is the Holy Spirit at work. That God can change their hearts. But that's you can't do that though. You are incapable of making her a repentant Christian. You cannot change that. God can. And guess
The
what?
more likely result of prayer is He will open your eyes. God will open your eyes, give you patience and insight and understanding. And He's not going to change others because they have free will. So prayer will change you more likely than changing others.
But if you are married, yeah, pray because God's in control. But also that also solidifies your relationship to God. You're not closing yourself off. And you're also opening yourself up to, insights from God's word, which may help you, particularly the Proverbs and Song of Solomon and Ecclesiastes and other portions of God's word. If you're married, you should be having lots of sex, but you probably aren't if you gotten to this point. Let's be honest. You're probably not because although there are those kind of dysfunctional marriages out there where they're both crazy and man, they can quarrel and have lots of sex. But But you should be having lots of sex. Sex, I heard somebody say, is the glue that holds the marriage together. Or I say it's like the sacrament of the institution. Sex is the sacrament or the glue that holds the marriage together. There's also a correlation statistically on divorce rate of first marriages and sexless marriages or low sex marriages of once a week or less. Also, George has a video about this. Just again, George Bruno, like and subscribe to him. There we go. That's what he says about sex and marriage.
I said this last week. If you're having issues in your relationship, in your marriage, have sex daily for 1 month. Just go for it. Torture yourself and have sex daily for 1 month. Mix it up. Some marathon sessions, some quickies. Always eat the peach, because this is Eat a Peach month. Do it until she puts you in a headlock with her thighs. Make sure you do that first or in the beginning of your session together. There, my brother, is your marriage counseling. Getting her good and often is the key. It will relieve pressure. It will bring you guys closer, and it minimizes conflict. Don't doubt me on this. A well woman is a happy woman. And it took me forever to figure this out. When a woman is deprived of lovemaking on a regular basis, she becomes aloof. She needs it, fellas. She needs it. She's got to have it. And guess what? It's not going to happen if you're overweight, overworked, have a shitty diet, don't drink.
There you go. Sex is important, guys. Again, you can't change her. Women are pliable, as Steve will say, but she still has her own agency, even though the church says she doesn't. But and yet they blame. That's why they're blaming you for everything. But no, she makes her own choices. If you are here at marital counseling, it's usually, again, the last stop before the justification of her divorcing your ass. Okay. Now there's some things I wrote here, Steve. I'll let you explain that.
What, the
That's
last
kind of
bit?
your ideas. Yeah, that
Well,
last page, you see that.
I think guilt is a factor that drives women. Guilt comes from IPA, infidelity, promiscuity, abortion. And the mask is she looking for fun or is she looking for adventure or stability? She starts out looking for adventure, exploring in her 20s, then the family in her 30s, and then after a couple of kids, I have to go find myself. Oh, back to exploration. That's when she divorces. That is a mask. What is her goal? She's going to work towards her goal. Her goal was exploration. She's going to go for multiple men and multiple experiences. Her goal is having a family. She's going to use her sexuality to love bomb, sex bomb you to get what she wants. And then she's going to go back to using her sexuality to get her exploration. But, okay, how does this make sense? Well, it just happens. If you want to keep your wife, now, I've been successful in this, but my thought is you need to keep this exploration desire in her and have that within the marriage. So she has to see you as that guy, not the guy she settled for, the guy she wants, and keep that in there. And frankly, if there is undiscussed, unforgiven infidelity, promiscuity, and abortion, guilt, that's like a whole trainload of baggage that she's carrying around with her into your marriage. And
And a lot of
ask
times the
her
marital counseling won't even discover this.
oh no, you won't. Okay, you will never discover this. I didn't discover this I only realized it in retrospect after 2 failed marriages, 2 years after the second divorce. What's going on here? Because I saw some pieces of information that indicate certain things, but that's all you're going to have. If you're very astute, you will find the indicators that say, yeah, there was something going on with that infidelity, promiscuity, or abortion, or all three. But proof? No. These are the deeply held secrets. She will lie about these things, and she has to lie because she's trying to hide her guilt. And then later on, when she wants to get rid of you, this guilt, she will project all this crap onto you to blame you for the problem.
So I think we did an episode on this, Nick. I think you did an episode titled Misdirection.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is always true, but I do wonder if a lot of what women confess to early in the relationship during counseling, because they will confess to some things. I wonder if a lot of it is so that you don't go digging any deeper.
Mm.
Because
Are they really that smart though? Maybe. Maybe they're
well,
not just
it
not
doesn't
smart.
It's
require
not
being
a matter of intelligence.
Yeah,
It's an
it's not.
instinct.
Yeah, this is an instinctual thing. If I tell, it's the well, if he knows about this and that, and well, also the other thing to consider, Nick, is that it can be cathartic to speak some of your sins.
Oh, it's like a halfway repentance, but it's not true repentance. Okay.
Well, you are
Ah.
forgiven for those things that you articulate. That's actually a kind of a truth in the Catholic Church. You can be forgiven in confession for the things you mention, but you're not going to be forgiven for the things you withhold. And if you withhold some major things, well, you convince the or confess the minor things. Hey, none of it counts.
Right.
And there's some merit to that.
So the masks. Yeah. Yeah. Misdirection. Yeah. We've done episodes on these things, but also we've talked about this again before, especially I think Steve and I think Plutarch's wife, Elena, knows about this as well. I'm sure Plutarch does too. Pheromones and birth control. Was
Yep,
she on birth control when she met you?
my ex was.
Yep.
And
First
what
one.
can
Yep.
birth control? What can birth control do?
It actually changes their body chemistry, and in changing their body chemistry, it changes how they react to your body chemistry. So, women who are on birth control, it and this varies by the form of birth control. Obviously, a condom doesn't have this problem. But if you're taking the pill it requires a fairly high dose because it's diffuse. It has to, in order to do its job, it has to get into their entire system at a fairly high dosage level. It's also why they have to take it every day. So but it basically is tricking their body into thinking they're pregnant. Well, we know from long history that women who are pregnant value different things in men than women who are not pregnant. If you're on birth control, you're basically tricking yourself into thinking that you want a beta provider guy, and then the moment you get off that birth control, all of a sudden you're like, he. You could even say he even smells different, and women have actually said that. I didn't get that one, but women have said, "Oh yeah, he smelled different, and I didn't like it."
Let me talk about that specifically. In my first marriage, if I wanted sex, okay, I was in an office job. I didn't sweat that much during the day. No, You stink. Go take a shower. Okay, so I'd take a shower. Then could make love. Soon as it was done, he would hop out of bed and go take a shower. Nadia, think she didn't like my scent? In event, she always talked about how I didn't smell right. Right? The smell of me was kind of repulsive to her. That's a biological thing.
Oh, a fun fact: Elena was not on birth control when we met. Oh, interesting. Had a slightly different outcome in that relationship. Guys,
Right.
this stuff matters a lot.
Yes.
You go tinkering with your hormones like this, particularly without really understanding what it is and what it's doing to you. And look, some people say, "Oh, well, I have an IUD." Well, IUD is a different mechanism, at different drugs, different doses, all of that. Some women say it works a lot better for them. You guys got to do your research. But how she meets you, what she's doing to her hormones when she meets you is the critical part here. Because if she goes off the drugs, or if she goes on the drugs later, I know guys who they had kids, because here's the flip side of this. They have kids. And then both agree that, okay, we had enough kids, we're done. You're going to get on the pill now so that we don't have any more. Okay. That's a perfectly valid reason to okay. Some girls do that right after pregnancy, because you're not supposed to have sex after pregnancy for 6 weeks. So they say, here's, you go on the pill. A lot of dead bedrooms post pregnancy can either be she got off the pill and she was on the pill when you met and she doesn't like the way you smell now, or it can be you met off the pill and now you're going on it and she doesn't like the way you smell. Typically that happens later after multiple kids. So if you had 2 to 3 kids, you're like, there's a reason why 7 to 8 years is a major divorce point, because they're not going to decide to divorce you overnight. I actually know when my ex-wife originally wanted out of the relationship, and it was many months before the fighting actually started. Okay. So it's not going to happen right away. You're going to have 3 kids. Okay, let's say you have 3 kids. That's going to take you, the average person, that takes them about 6 years to do. Oh, well, that leaves 2 years for the divorce. And in there somewhere, you probably decided that she needs to get on the pill. And she's going to tell you things like, you know what? It'll help control my periods, because it does. It'll help regulate my mood. Well, kinda. It'll regulate it away from you, that's for sure. Okay. So, but then that 2 years now, she's been consistently on the pill. You smell wrong. And now she's got the kids. So she just kind of, when women pour themselves into the kids, right?
There's nothing left for you.
Right.
Or so they say.
Here's another thing. Okay, we all know dogs have a sense of smell like a million times more acute than humans. Guys, a woman's sense of smell is about 1,000 times better than yours. I mean, it's a couple orders of magnitude greater. That's just the way it is. Maybe I'm off by a factor, but it is multiples more acute than the male. And so you can't imagine how acute it is and how important it is that things smell right. And if it's that acute and something doesn't smell right, there is naturally a revulsion that comes from that. She can't help it. Don't blame her for that. You did something wrong to marry a woman because you were messing with nature where she was
Mhm.
while it happened. Can't expect God to fix something that you messed up or humanity messed up.
Okay, I got to pull this comment up just so that we can have a good chuckle from Colonel. No pill, weak pull out game, 7 kitty. You know what? It's true. Like, guys, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, so we've done some questions and answers, and I mean, some answers and solutions. That's not all solutions, it's just knowledge and trying to understand perhaps the situation you're in, how to deal with the church, what you can expect, what you can't expect, and some deeper things to get into that might be why she's so quarrelsome and you're maybe high chance of heading to divorce, probably with a stop, maybe you're not with the pastor or marriage counseling. But I've been trying to emphasize, and as I said in my book before, I think marriage counseling is essentially castration for men. And I think this good man, George Bruno, makes that fact very clear. In fact, that's the title of it.
There are certain words, when you hear them, I want you to replace that word in your brain. So when you hear the word counseling, I want you to think castration.
Aptly put.
Yep. Agree. Did it. The whole
All
purpose
right.
of it was to castrate me.
All right, guys. So that's the quarrelsome church wives. Yeah, it's a lot about sex. Yeah, it's a lot about nature. There's some rebellion against God, but also know that family, church, society, they are operating on the feminist and gynocentric system with the feminine imperative. They are generally not on your side, even though the church should be. A lot of times with the quarrelsome woman, they're out to get you. And you need to understand the problem and listen to some of the wisdom that we've given. I think it'll help you.
And the number of divorces out there and the number of men who are blindsided and don't want divorce and try and contrive and come up with some way to avoid it doesn't happen very often. And for the amount of hours and thousands, hundreds of thousands of men who've tried to fix this can come up with a solution how to avoid divorce when your wife wants to divorce you. The solution has not been presented, which I'm assuming that's because the solution does not exist.
It doesn't.
Not in our current environment, no.
So if she uses the word divorce, she's thinking about it. She's implementing something down those roads. Pack your parachute. And then if you go into the church process to avoid divorce, you're not, in all likelihood, like 99% of the time, you're not going to avoid it. So don't waste your energy focusing on avoiding the divorce. Focus the energy on being the man that you need to be, on making sure your parachute is packed because you are the father of the children. Your first priority, yeah, theoretically, it's to your wife, but she's out. She's gone mentally.
Can't count on that.
So
She's your enemy
you
now.
need to pack
She's
your
become your enemy.
parachute and prepare to be there for your children in the future as best you can.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I think I think we have done a pretty good job. And I like the fact that we got a bunch of I don't know if they're necessarily solutions, because I'm not sure there is an actual solution here, but at least tools that men can use to defend themselves, or if not defend themselves, then to prepare themselves for what's coming. Statistically, half of you all are going to get divorced out there if you're married. That's just the math, guys. So what I would say then is, men, share this with other men, because I know for a fact that every man out there knows a guy who is either getting set up for this or is going through it. Again, if 56% of first divorce, if 56% of people get married, get divorced on the first time, 1 out of every 2 men you meet will be going through this. So please share the video. We love interacting with comments, and Steve, you've got some to go look at on our prior video.
Okay.
But we love that. But this is a video for men, and it is intended to be shared with men, particularly this video. So yeah, please share. Subscribe if you haven't already, and you like what you heard, of course. Don't subscribe if you don't like what you heard. Get Nick's book, link in the chat there. And Steve, I think you're on for Monday. Do you remember what we're talking about?
No, not really. Got notes here someplace. I wrote down the title. Remember what the title was?
I don't remember what the title was.
I don't remember.
Well, we had ideas of doing something on historical ads.
Oh yeah,
Sexist
yes.
ads.
Oh,
Yeah, that's next week. That's you, Steve.
Is that the one we're gonna do?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I know what to do my research on.
Yep.
I love
is it
those
sexist
sexist
historical
ads.
ads?
Yeah, it's the sexist ads. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, and we can
Nice.
dive into a little bit of ad psychology, and I'd love to do a compare and contrast with how they do advertising now. I think it'd be fascinating to look at how it's changed. So that'll be kind of fun. To our viewers, yes, we are trying to keep it a little fun right now. We are aware of all the drama going on in the United States over the election, and I think we've all kind of said our piece on that in prior streams. So we're just trying to keep it a little fun, more light-spirited, lighthearted. That does not mean that we will not get back to our usual scheduled programming of heavy-hitting analysis and ecclesiastical troublemaking. But we're going to wait until after the election for a lot of that stuff. So thanks for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all in the chat on Monday with Steve, where we can have a good laugh over some advertising.
Okay.
All right.
Later, guys.
Later.